Entrepreneurship is over glamorized because of multiple PRs, funding, various other things that come across. And a lot of young audience and young viewers would turn around and say, ki, yaar, I want to be an entrepreneur for the glamour quotient. But hakikat ye hai ki for one success, there are 100 failures. Do you believe in hustle and jugaad? And what is the difference between hustle and jugaad?
Let's forget both these words. I'm not comfortable with the word hustle, but since startup people love the word hustle, so I use it.
They love it.
I identify more with resourcefulness. When you look at our portfolio in India and Indonesia, the kind of companies that we have are slightly more hatke than what the traditional news media would be. But I think that's where the world is going, because
वेलकम बैक टू द लाइफबोट सीजन 2। आज हम बात करेंगे एक ऐसे विजनरी लीडर से जिन्होंने अपने यूनिक अप्रोच और स्ट्रेटेजिक ब्रिलियंस से चैलेंजेस को अपॉर्चुनिटीज में बदलने का हुनर दिखाया है। मीट कोरील लाहिरी, a leader who's redefined how success is achieved through resilience, innovation and purpose-driven action। कोरील की जर्नी एक पावरफुल एग्जांपल है कि कैसे फेलियर्स को सक्सेस में बदला जा सकता है। In this episode, he shares how setbacks became stepping stones, the lessons he learned from challenges, and how he used those experiences to fuel growth and transformation into his career. He also dives into the importance of building strong teams, fostering creativity, and navigating uncertain times with confidence. Koreel believes that true leadership lies in the ability to turn vision into reality while inspiring others to do the same. और इसके साथ हम उनके पर्सनल फिलॉसफीज के बारे में भी जानेंगे, वो वैल्यूज जो उनकी जर्नी का फाउंडेशन है, उनके मेंटर्स जो उन्हें इंस्पायर करते हैं, और उनके लाइफ बोट्स जो उन्हें हर स्टॉर्म से निकलने में मदद करते हैं। Get ready to uncover the secrets of turning challenges into opportunities with Koreel Lahiri as we navigate this inspiring journey of leadership, resilience and impact. Let's sail sail on the lifeboat. Welcome to the lifeboat. Stories that keep you afloat.
Koreel, welcome to the lifeboat.
Thank you, Vinayak. It's my pleasure, and it's my pleasure to host you at my home.
Wonderful, and such a warm house, and so much of warmth. I love the coffee you've
given me. You want the AC to be turned up a bit?
And in December, the fact that we have AC on in Bombay itself shows
that how warm the house is.
Mumbai is Mumbai at the end of the day. But thank you for doing this. Thank you for taking out the time.
My pleasure.
When you look at deciding on a portfolio to invest in, when you decide on that founder and say that this is the founder I want to take a bet on, when you look at the metal of the character of the founder, how much of this 360-degree approach, including whether the person has the ability to push him or herself outside the comfort zone, the extracurriculars other than just the business, what builds that person's character, how much of it do you give relevance to? And have you ever had a situation where you've seen a great learning come from one of these thought processes, saying that while it looks so apparent ki banda aisa hai ya bandi aisi hai, but suddenly you realize that the metal was far deeper, because when you start scratching the surface, you realize the depth of that individual. Take us through some learning around that. Do you believe in this philosophy first? And second, because you've done it yourself, I'm assuming you believe. Second, how does that determine your choice in terms of the horse you want to bet on?
100%. And Vinayak, you have to see that we mostly invest, or at least throughout my career, I've invested in fairly early stage companies, maybe in some cases, only a very few cases, much more mature companies when it came to consumer goods, etc. But largely it has been, I would say, in senses of the number of things that we kind of take into account while assessing a business. I think who the founder is, what the founders are, I think it's pretty much overweight on that. Key things is I like to sit with a founder and talk, and it has to be face-to-face talking. It cannot be video calls, because there are so many subliminal body language things that you can pick up from that. The way they talk, whether they are meeting your eye when talking about certain facts. If you pose the same question many times, are the answers changing or not? how subtly they are changing or how blatantly they are changing, etc. And I think one of the greatest things I look for is definitely hunger. How do you judge hunger? I mean, if you have a formula, please let me know.
Nobody
I
has.
don't have a formula to
Nobody
judge
has.
hunger. I only can see what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, how many hours you're putting in, how passionately you believe in that, the outcome that you're chasing, whatever that outcome might be. It could be something like what Shobit and Supriya are doing at Josh Talks. It could be something that somebody else, one of our clients in Indonesia is doing with the legal product that they are building. It's how many, मतलब आप कितना जूता घिस रहे हो ज़मीन पे, and how many hours you are trying to kind of devote to that in a constructive way. Some people find it very easy to delegate it also, but one of the greatest things that I have seen is that even if you delegate, I think you must have a complete grip on the entire subject matter yourself. You cannot suddenly become a founder and say that अब मैं इसके ऊपर हूँ and my second in command has been delegated, so they will take care of the dirty work. I know I'm running the company, I have the maximum shareholding, but I don't know what the numbers are. I'm talking and going meeting investors, but when it comes to doing the financial modeling, I'm palming it off to my CFO or to the CA. That's not how it works, because if you are a founder, you have to have everything on the back of your hand. And that's one of the greatest things I judge, is that the hunger comes from wanting to know everything that you're doing and wanting to keep it in some sphere of your own command.
Ownership
The
and accountability.
ownership. Now, this ownership is different from being a control freak.
Absolutely.
So there's a very thin line between ownership
Very well
and control freak. So again, that's control freak of not control freak is something you will not learn by just one or two meetings. You have to sit there. You have to. Sometimes I think one of the best things is to just observe everybody else in the room, and you keep making your observations and then make your own decision on.
बोलो कम सुनो ज़्यादा.
Ha, I mean, doesn't always work.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you have to kind of
course.
also pitch yourself as an investor.
Of course.
Because as an investor, it is, I mean, why should a founder select us? So you also have to pitch yourself.
It's a two-way approach.
And sometimes it gets lost because there is so much of conversation happening, you forget to listen. And I have realized that some of the mistakes I have made are when I have forgotten to listen. I have been hearing, but I have not been actively listening to what was the subtext of something.
Entrepreneurship is over glamorized because of multiple PRs, funding, various other things that come across. And a lot of young audience and young viewers would turn around and say कि यार, I want to be an entrepreneur for that glamour quotient. पर हकीकत ये है कि for one success there are 100 failures. Now, when you hook this across, and when, let's say, sometimes there is little success that a person sees, it's very easy for that young entrepreneur to start getting a sense of hubris. हम ही हम हैं, बाकी सब में पानी कम है. And then suddenly you start walking a little higher above the ground and maybe go towards directions which you're not supposed to, or make mistakes that you're not supposed to. As an investor, you've dealt with not just currently all your portfolios across your career span as an investor, but you've met so many people also before making the decision. If I had to ask you this question, again for the benefit of our viewers, that when you meet entrepreneurs, what are those specific red flags which make you realize that no matter how beautiful the packaging is, but this is one horse I will never bet on? Reason I ask you, Koreel, is a lot of them may want to do things basis directions that they see on social media, but that may not be right. Coming from the horse's mouth, in this case an investor's perspective, to say, यार ये करोगे तो चाहे जितना भी आपको दिखे कमाल, but actually है नहीं वो धमाल. So how do you go across that context to say, okay, these are the 2, 3, 4 items that I see as red flags. So no matter how amazing your own package, I will not put my money on it.
There's one question. It's called the why.
Why? Go
why?
little granular.
Why? And from that why comes everything else, right? Why did you start this organization? Can you take us through your story? वो why में बहुत कुछ
But story तो यार pitch हो सकता है, story तो grafted हो सकता है.
नहीं, उसमें जब story को आप बार बार सुनोगे,
right,
2-3 बार मिलोगे, 2-3 बार अलग अलग तरीके से why पूछोगे, you will, if it is not a genuine story, cracks appear.
Okay.
Firstly is the why. Sometimes in that why also, maybe there is not a crack, maybe that person is genuinely believing that, but that why doesn't resonate with you.
Fair.
So I will not probably firstly.
But that's like an investment philosophy. I'm
Correct.
talking more of a red flag.
No, red flag secondary. I mean, it is from an investor's perspective, that's a red flag, because if my philosophy only doesn't match, I mean, I'm
Of course,
probably not.
then it's
going
not
to
a mismatch. My question is more pointed to say कि कोई कुछ दिखाने का कोशिश कर रहा है लेकिन वो
Second,
सक्सेसफुल
हाँ,
नहीं
मैं
है.
आ रहा हूँ. The other thing is, these are all, everything that I'm talking is very non-measurable, because
Correct.
even when I'm talking, I'm kind of thinking actively in my mind कि ऐसा क्या है, because it's not codified what I do, some of these parts, elements. It's not like a financial model that I'm assessing कि
Absolute.
आपका EBITDA कितना है, margin कितना है, इस industry में इतना margin होना चाहिए, etc. This is not like that. One of the main things again is name dropping. Some people love to drop names of how many VCs they are talking with and this and that. उसने मुझे term sheet दे दी, ये तो term sheet आने वाला है. Some people will try to rush you into doing a decision. The moment I feel even the slightest pressure of being rushed into a decision, hands off. I mean, at least for the time being, I'll hand off. I mean, cool down. Let's see if that guy is still interested after a month also or not. Often happens. After a month, suddenly they'll come back. Oh, can we pick up the conversation again? पहले
So
मुझे
artificial
FOMO दिखा
FOMO
के.
था. Artificial
हाँ,
FOMO, yeah.
If you are creating FOMO,
Yeah.
what is your rush? I mean, either you are timing your fundraise wrong and you've already run out of cash, in which case, if I give you the money, you are probably going to fund your losses rather than growing the
Yeah.
business, right?
So
As
their artificial FOMO.
entrepreneur, आपको पता ही नहीं था आपका cash flow क्या है, तो हो क्या रहा है यहाँ पे? And if you're creating a FOMO just to get valuation, that means in your mind it's valuation first and not
Yeah.
sustainability of your business. For me, it is a good idea, has to be a good sustainable business, and it has to be backed by people who are probably very good executors with bright ideas. Ideas is the execution matters always, because ideas you can still sometimes get from here and there.
Ideas are a galore.
Ideas तो बहुत होता है. The second thing is that the founder's own life beyond that company, sometimes you want to assess whether they are, I mean, maybe they are too flashy. For example, today only I was talking to another kind of colleague, or not from my organization, another investor.
Yeah.
Basically, we were discussing, I mean, the flashiness of a founder beyond the life of the company also sometimes is a very good marker कि क्या है. So you look at the flashiness of his or her lifestyle compared to what the business is earning. So are they raising, fundraising, and then what's happening? You have to kind of read between the lines. It's not always the case, but sometimes we have seen many newspaper reports like that.
Now, for some people, jugaad is very different and hustle is very different. For some people, perhaps they are interconnected. There are multiple views I've seen in terms of when I ask my guests, do you believe in hustle and jugaad? And what is the difference between hustle and jugaad? And more importantly, do you think that at all points of time, hustle or jugaad is always a clean blue tick? Or maybe at times it's also a red flag around it?
Okay, let's forget both these words. I'm not comfortable with the word hustle, but since
Why are you not
startup
comfortable?
people love the word hustle,
Oh, they
so I
love
use it.
They love it.
I don't. I identify more with resourcefulness, and it encompasses.
But isn't that jugaad?
No.
What is the difference?
Huh? There might be a subtle difference, but in my mind, there is a definite difference. I mean, resourcefulness is also. See, jugaad, I kind of, at least in my mind, I identify it as a cheaper way to be resourceful.
Okay.
But true resourcefulness is knowing that you will not be know everything yourself, and you go and take the help of others.
No, go granular on the cheaper. Are you trying to say that jugaad has a negative connotation? That you may want to do things through a shortcut?
Exactly, because shortcuts are non-sustainable.
Would you advise our viewers that jugaad is, like today, jugaad is so over-glamorized to say,
No, I would-
jugaad कुछ नहीं कर सकते आप life में.
No, that's
What's your view?
I think you have to be resourceful. Jugaad might be a subset of being resourceful, but you have to be resourceful in a sustainable manner. So,
Take
for
us through a live example where in your role as an investor, you would have seen in maybe any, and I don't want you to name anyone, but maybe one potential or one portfolio founder where you've seen the sheen of jugaad, But you actually then said that jugaad will help you to go only up to X, Y, Z limit, but resourcefulness is what is sustainable. Take us through some live examples.
It will be tough for me to give you a live example simply because
Now you're just avoiding it. You don't skirt the issue.
no, because I'm being resourceful. Because the kind of companies that we invest are very, very unique. And if I kind of take some examples, it will be immediately identifiable.
I see. Be resourceful. Say the example without making the audience
No,
identify.
I would say that. Let me, without taking an example,
Yeah.
let me tell you exactly what I mean by this. I would say that, for example, in my career, let's say that first example that I took, why do I call it resourceful? Because I was building, I knew that I had a certain skill. I knew that it would appeal to this person because this person was clearly somebody in whom I saw a longer term mentor. It wasn't that, again, it wasn't that on the very first day that I'm having chai with him, I'm telling him to give me this or do this, right? Again, going back to the first example of what is good networking is that you build up a rapport.
Gradually.
And then, so what was the rapport that I built up? The rapport that I built up was this guy loved Led Zeppelin, he loved Deep Purple. I am a very big classic rock, heavy metal fan.
Smoke on the water, fire in the eyes.
Everything. So I found probably at that point I was looking for Stairway to Heaven maybe. But I found the hooks to develop a relationship which we have till today with that person. If it had been Jugaad, I would have probably
Broken it down much earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I would have just got that thing done and then I would not have looked back on that person ever.
Yeah. You very smartly, resourcefully have avoided and skirted the issue of giving.
I'm like that.
Giving an example of maybe, and I don't, as I said, I don't want you to take names of portfolios, but get into that investor mind of Koreel. A lot of questions to ask from and on behalf of our viewers. If we have to look at a pitch, a lot of emphasis is given on that first pitch. A lot of jargons have come out: elevator pitch, train pitch, bus pitch, etc. Fast pitch, slow pitch. But I think if you remove these jargons and come to that essence of the pitch, and one of my friends created a fantastic series around it called Pitches, which became very, very successful. And I was also chatting with Arunab on this to say that, the whole idea came in terms of how it actually has so much of emotion in trying to be able to convert that first pitch. Some of our viewers are in that segment which attracts you as an investor. And if they have to come and think, okay, what is that particular quality in a pitch that attracts Koreel to start the conversation to move towards a positive direction? What are the learnings that one can take from you as an investor hat? What are those key aspects that you see in a pitch which makes you say, ye thoda hatke hai from others? Because you're used to seeing, I don't know, maybe a few hundred pitches maybe in a month. How do you remove the wheat from the chaff? How do you say that this is what is exciting versus this is what is noise? Teach us that. Take us through that investor's mindset to say the few key qualities to make one pitch beat the others and draw your attention.
So firstly is, I think, the situational awareness of how unique you are or whether you're not unique. Because sometimes everybody says they're unique.
Yeah.
And you ask them, so can you show me a competitive set? Oh, we don't have competition. Okay. I will probably not call you back. Because everybody has
competition.
The second thing is showing wild numbers. See, I don't care about how beautiful your pitch deck looks or whatever. You must have a pitch deck, don't get me wrong. It has to have certain basic elements covered of why you're doing the business, how you will do it, who are the founders, etc., etc. But you must, I'm not expecting, I'm not expecting wild hockey stick curves. So don't show me those because we all know what the ground reality is.
Yeah.
Your business will not go from 1 to 200 within 5 years. Okay.
The J curve goes into J walking, as they say.
So let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah.
And if you're saying something, so even if your 1 is going to a believable 10 within 5 years, what is your homework behind it? if I'm asking you on the call, let's say, for example, Vinayak, you come to me with a pitch deck and you said, can we have a call? I said, yes. We set up a 45-minute slot. You're presenting it to me on Zoom. We go through all these things. You've tick marked most of the things that, okay, your product is probably, if not unique, it is uniquely built. Maybe you own the IP. Maybe you are targeting a different set of the audience. So for that audience, this is a unique product and it makes sense for them. And that audience is growing at a certain rate. Your product has the ability to extract economic benefits from that audience at a certain price point, and therefore it makes sense for you to survive as a business. But is it only, if I tell you, Vinayak, can you open the financial model and show me? And you say, though, we haven't built a financial model yet, or we don't know how the economics will work, what is the unit economics, I will probably start losing interest very fast, because I will say that, well, a pretty deck anybody can make. But if you have a very ordinary looking deck, but you have a very solid calculations in the back end, and those calculations can be, can never, maybe they will never pan out, but it gives me a window into how you think through a problem. Because the way you build your assumptions, the way you think of the various moving elements within that financial model gives me a window into your mind of how many things have you thought of, or are you doing it because it's fashionable to be an entrepreneur. So I think it's about being situationally aware and putting in the hard work of understanding how your segment operates, what could be the pitfalls that you will encounter, what could be even the boosters that you will encounter, and therefore if you encounter a booster, how will you capitalize on it? Maybe you will say that, okay, in the third year, if we do this right, in the third year this will probably happen. At that point, we'll suddenly need to hire a CTO, because till now we don't need a CTO, we need a CTO, but that CTO is going to come for a 2 crore cost. But this is my plan of how I'm going to approach it. I'm oversimplifying it, but you get the drift.
Given the stage at where you enter, and this is something which again I think will help our viewers to a great extent. What are the most common mistakes that you've seen founders make while they're scaling their business?
They don't phase it out. They want to do everything at once because they get excited, right? It's their baby. Their baby can do anything.
Superman or superhuman from day one.
Whatever. All of us have kids, right? And we feel that our kid is the best and our kid can do everything.
Right.
It's that same thing. So it's just, I know all these ideas might be good. They might pan out. No doubt on you and your execution abilities, but let's plan it out phase by phase. Let's do phase 1. Let's look at the successes. Let's do a debrief and weed out all the failures of that particular strategy. Then let's go to phase 2. Let's go to phase 3. Be a little patient.
Be 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10
be in
to
it for the long. You're building this company to be sustainable for the long term, right? So don't be in a hurry to. I think that also is one of the things that when people talk about their plans, and I'm going back to one of the earlier questions you asked me, when people talk about their plans while pitching, you also get a sense of, are they building a long-term business with which they will stay themselves for the longest term, or are they building something to exit? Neither strategy is bad, but as an investor, what does my thesis align with? I don't align with somebody building to exit. But for a person, maybe that person is a serial entrepreneur. Maybe that's the way they earn their money.
Correct.
It's not right or wrong, but it doesn't align with me.
A lot of our aspiring entrepreneurs have this myth कि यार VCs जो होते हैं, they are unreachable, unattainable, unapproachable. डर लगता है उनसे. पता नहीं है क्या पूछ लेंगे, पता नहीं क्या judge कर लेंगे. A lot of nowadays, scenarios are in these nice private clubs like Quorum, where VCs are sitting with this nice leveraged outfit and taking these poor entrepreneurs apart with multiple questions. I keep seeing this several times that I go, then I smile when I meet quite a few of these friends of mine. But if you had to debunk one myth for our viewers with respect to investors, with respect to VCs, saying that ये एक myth है which I want to debunk about VCs, what would that be?
We are all humans. Right? At the end of the day, I don't know. I don't go to a quorum. I sit in a Starbucks. Okay? I'm very approachable. You can ping me on LinkedIn. You can ping me anywhere.
Guys, remember that. You can ping him on LinkedIn and get his attention.
So for me, it is again boils down to the fact that I'm naturally curious. I know that even if something is not really up my alley within my investment thesis, I'll still go and I'll even meet an EV entrepreneur because I'm curious.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that. And secondly, I think it's also, at least I bear this responsibility heavily, is that just because I'm kind of in some ways, firstly, it's not my money. We've also raised it from LPs. So it is completely artificial or superficial for us to imagine that it is our money and we are the Rajas and we will hold a darbar and people will come and,
Salam Thok.
salam thoko and all of that. So that's not how it is supposed to be. What it is supposed to be, it's supposed to be a two-way street where I'm probably providing capital to somebody who has a valuable proposition, and together we'll build something that is even more valuable.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, it really doesn't matter whether I sit at a Starbucks, whether I sit in that person's office, or we sit wherever we sit. At least in my books, I don't want to be doing it only online. It doesn't work for me. As I said, I like to read body languages. But we could be anywhere. Do you need an office? It depends on the business these days. Sometimes you don't even need an office, right? But yeah, if you have anything more than 5 team members, anyway, we are looking at not seed stage, right?
Yeah.
So we are looking at growth stage companies. So you will probably have
easily you'll have
40, 50 team members. You should have a place to work. I mean, you need that little bit of organization and little bit of discipline within the working thing. Everybody can't be left to their own devices. But does it mean that we'll be old school in thinking that, acha, we went to their office, but nobody was sitting there, people were working from home.
Yeah.
This might not be a good place? No. It's all contextual at the end of the day, right? But there has to be some semblance of this place being organized and functional and growing, and a logic behind and a method behind the madness.
True. You also mentioned earlier that one of the advantages that you come in at an early stage, and predominantly you are, in my experience of working with you and the organization, has been that you're within the first or the second institutional investor on the cap table. So it's a very early stage of the company. Company is also shaping itself. The founders shaping the ideas and ideation. The team is shaping all of that. In this comes a very important quality which a lot of people don't perhaps give enough importance to, and that is the culture. You've had the privilege, Koreel, of seeing multiple companies in different shades, different stages, and been with them, and some of them which have grown pretty large. What is your definition of culture? And for the benefit of our viewers, how important is culture to shape up the DNA of that organization? And is it a very dynamic phase that keeps changing with the stage and growth? Or are fundamentals things which need to stay absolutely the way they were from day one? Define culture in your words as an investor.
So I think culture, flows top down. So it flows from the founders themselves and what they believe in. I will say there is no right or wrong culture. There is a right or wrong culture for, let's say, the organization and the people that are within the organization. So for example, let's say somebody's culture is to be extremely fast moving and very open, and therefore anybody can come up with an idea, and therefore that could lead to a fair bit of chaos of which idea to select, because everybody is free to give ideas, etc. But if that company's culture is that they have this way of settling things internally and saying that, okay, this guy's idea sounds better, nobody else feels disheartened because of that, and they've built a healthy culture around it, why not? Go for it. That's your culture. Another organization might be much more top driven, saying that the CEO will say, this is my idea, we will implement this. Everybody else is happy within that, saying that, this is the CEO's idea, we will also implement this. That's their culture. It's a more top down culture. It's probably less interactive than the previous culture. But I think culture is contextual within the context of the company, and companies which thrive are where probably a large majority of people subscribe to that culture, I would say. And if that culture allows the company to be nimble enough to move ahead and say that either this way or that way. We all are moving ahead in synchronicity with each other within the team and doing things ethically. Who are we to complain? We cannot, as investors, we will not get into and say that, no, this is, I have given you the money, so I will tell you what culture is. No, that's not my job. My job is to make sure that governance, overall corporate governance, compliance, strategic thinking, being a sounding board of maybe the operational strategy, revenue strategy, helping founders maybe connect with other people.
The intangible capital.
That is what, how we should be driving it. Should we be looking at culture and driving it at our end as investors? Probably no. That short point being that I cannot define culture in a sentence. It's what works for everybody.
Very important learning around this. I want to draw a very practical situation from this, and again, for the sake of our viewers, take your experience and learning. A lot of times, Koreel, we have had a situation where there are multiple founders. A lot of times, there's a single founder. A lot of our viewers might be in that stage to take a choice between saying कि अकेले कर लो या किसी के साथ करो. Do I look at it as a solo founder? Do I look at it as a co-founder? Do I need multiple co-founders? What's your take in terms of the positives and the negatives with respect to co-founders? Do you think there is a thumb rule as an investor to say कि एक से भले दो? Or is there a situation to say कि as long as you can go across and do it yourself, even a fantastic the L1s as you call it, or the C-Secs as you call it, all of them work around it as well? Or is there a good ability to go across and say that from an investor perspective, the risk is mitigated when you have multiple account holders, each one being their vertical owners? I know that there is no right or wrong answer around it, but there is a tendency to have some frame of mind as an investor, which I think for our viewers is going to be very helpful if they are in this dilemma. कि यार अकेले करो, साथ करो. What's your take on single founder, solo founder versus co-founders? And if there are co-founders, what are those aspects that they should bear in mind before coming together?
So I will not speak for other investors. I will speak for
Absolutely.
myself as an investor. I prefer at least a co-founding team rather over a single founder. How should that co-founding team be?
And also why?
It could, I'll tell you. So it could be 2 people or it could be 3 people. Not too many. Don't too many cooks spoil the broth. But there should be complementary skill set. So let's face it. Today, I mean, you can't expect one person to know everything, right? So one person will probably bring in a very hardcore product knowledge. One person will be a very good salesperson. Maybe one person brings in another skill set from a technology perspective, or so subject matters, business development, technology. Maybe that's 3 people. Maybe it could be a 2-founder set where there's business development and there's subject matter plus technology built in together. Okay, but definitely de-risks you a little bit as an investor, and also it's less from risk and also from a very practical perspective. You can't expect everybody to know everything and one person to drive everything. You make a good point saying that there could be one person and below them there is this C-suite of people. But if you ask me, I mean, the accountability and the sense of ownership and all that comes with a person being a co-founder is very different from somebody being part of the salary.
Absolutely. Skin in the game.
Skin in the game. Okay. And sorry, you had one more question to this?
If you have to choose between them, how do you choose your co-founder? What are those qualities that
complementary skill sets?
Define it a bit more. Go a little more granular on it.
So for example, as I was saying, that if I had to start off something today, I know that I have a good thesis, right? I know that I will probably make a very good investor, but I probably am not the best fundraiser. So I will probably need a co-founder who will be a fundraiser, right? So it's very different skill sets. One is a buy side, one is a sell side. Very
Correct.
different skill sets. That's how I would kind of say that if I were to start something. Now, similarly, if somebody were to start something new, let's say,
Take a consumer space example.
हाँ, let's say आपको मोकोवारा के bags बना के बेचने हैं. I mean, somebody has to have the correct product knowledge, what works, what design works with the people.
Yeah.
So you need a person who understands merchandising, designing, etc., sourcing of material. You will. I'm just going out on a limb and saying these things. You'll need somebody who knows the distribution channels, who can go and say that, okay, I'm senior and I know everybody in the distribution market. I just go and knock on their doors and the things are opened up, etc., etc. So you need those complementary skill set, and it's very important because again, you don't want people to be stepping on each other's toes all the time, right? So, and of course, from being a lawyer, there are those co-founder agreements, etc. But people are human beings, so the best way to avoid people from stepping on each other's toes is to have complementary skill sets rather than. And it's good for the company also.
More importantly, good for the company.
Yes, always good for the company.
Give verticals, give space, let them own their own verticals.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But there has to be one person, defined person within that co-founder on whom the buck stops as the CEO.
The vehicle has to have one driver.
There has to be one driver, but the others can be equally responsible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You need the navigator.
Yes.
But you need one person to be there on the driving seat. Let's take this back to the next level of the question that you said, which I think is a very important and a pertinent part of any venture that gets formed, is the next level of hiring the employees. Hiring, I think, is one of the toughest tasks. Your advantage is you're also a very involved investor. You've had experiences of seeing a lot of L1s being hired in your portfolio. A lot of times, Koreel, the resume speaks brilliantly. But when you meet that person, you see an absolute opposite dimension of what the resume says. By going with the resume, you would want to hire that person immediately. A lot of our viewers will be in that situation where they are now dealing with different people in the market they want to hire. Take us through few, and I want to go about red flags, because this show is not about just the obvious. This show is always about taking back the learnings to say, what are the things more not to do than to do? Because to do, everyone knows, a lot of people are talking about to do's. No matter how beautifully sheen the resume is, in your mind, in your experience as an investor who's gone through and seen stages of companies grow, what are the absolute red flags while hiring the L1s, the C-secs, the C-suites as they call it? What would you say are 2-3 qualities in these future leaders of the company? No matter what you see, would still say, it doesn't matter how tempting, my advice is don't hire.
So, okay, so just to kind of give a little bit of context, we don't get into the hiring ourselves.
No, you wouldn't, but you would obviously explain it.
Yes, we simply see, we see ourselves as enablers rather than decision makers. So, it's up to our portfolio companies to do that. They will probably source resumes, they will do the entire heavy lifting, etc. We will probably have a kind of a look at the final thing, maybe
the shortlisted candidates.
Not even the shortlisted, maybe the final 2 or maybe 1. And over there also we will not probably do we will probably trust the management's instincts. But before that, we will have a conversation about what we should look out for and what we should not look out for. I think one of the first things that I see is that hunger. Okay, now there is no good way of saying this, but how do I judge hunger? You cannot judge hunger by resumes. You can only judge hunger by talking to that person and meeting that person a few times and trying to meet that person in a so if I do an interview with you, you will always say the right things, right?
Correct. Because it's the honeymoon period. I'm showing my best case to you. I'm showing my best position to you.
You will come prepared. You will do everything.
Correct.
But the more you meet a person, the way it goes with investments, right? The more you meet a person, the more you dig slowly and steadily. You look out for signs of what could be perceived as hunger or lack of hunger. Maybe sometimes what happens is that very glowing senior resumes, people just want this last stop right now and I'll lend my name and this thing. but so how many team members will be working with me and all of that? Okay. Now, if that's a question that's coming in a Series B startup, a
Yeah.
person who's joining as, let's say, head of sales in a Series B head of revenue in a Series B startup, that's not a comfortable question, because even though they're raising Series B, it's not that they are flush with money all the time.
And you're expected to roll your sleeves and get into the thick of
Correct.
things.
So I would want a person, and especially these are for sales roles, what I'm talking about, the hunger, is the person has to roll up the sleeves and be willing to work. So a person who says, Ki, Acha, this is my pipeline, I think I can correlate X a percent of this pipeline with this, and this is how I will do the first 30 days, first 60 days. So you know a person's level of preparedness and hunger if they can logically take you through steps, rather than a person who faffs around saying that, oh, I know this person, oh, I know that person, etc. It comes back to the first thing that I say, name throwing and all, name dropping. I think it's one of, I mean, at least personally speaking, that's one of my ways of judging. I could be wrong, but in most cases, till now, I have been right.
Okay. Any other red flags?
I don't know. Sometimes most of the red flags appear after the person has joined. so which is why you should do a very nicely worded contract, which is where people like you come into play.
Yeah, I think for us it's way beyond the contract.
Yeah.
In terms of the question, what is the mindset of growing up in a small city, and how does that impact essence of hunger in you to do something?
Let's see. So the Allahabad that I grew up in was, and I will spit out a fact, in those days also it was probably about 5 lakh population or 5.5 lakh. I'm talking about through the 80s and the decade of the 90s. Not very big, but bigger than many other places. So we had a very good mix of a quiet, calm, big town or small city, as you might want to call it, with enough avenues for education. So there were good schools. Allahabad has always been famous for its school and university, etc. I think you yourself mentioned your father was educated there. So that was one of the best advantages, was that we grew up in a place which had the environment to provide me with good education. It was also in my house. My mother used to teach in the school that I studied, and it was arguably the best school in Allahabad. But if you ask the rival schools, they'll say that was the best. But let's put the argument to rest here. My school was the best.
Which school was that?
This was Boys High School and College Allahabad. So I studied there. What it gave me was, I was coming from it was what you call the Probashi Bangali family. So what we spoke or ate, or the kinds of things we did at home as after school activities, was very different to what maybe somebody else might be doing, because there was a lot more emphasis on reading, on academics, etc. The language that we spoke, the media that we consumed. I mean, there was only Doordarshan, but even within that, what we saw, or the music that was played at home, etc., everything, the kinds of books that were there were very different. So that was one, A. Because of that and who I was, and because of the fact that where I stayed, I had a certain bunch of friends who are obviously a mixed bag of friends, but again, we had certain common threads where most of us would come from families which encouraged reading, which encouraged something creative, etc. So we would end up exchanging books. In fact, in those days, I still remember, I mean, a brand new Hardy Boys used to cost 10 rupees. So it was like...
Franklin W. Dixon.
I'm aging myself over here, but it was...
I still remember the author. Do you remember the author?
But do you know that it's not Franklin W. Dixon, is just a pen name, and there were many authors behind
that. Correct.
So it's like that. So anyway, exchanging books, and then I was very interested in sports, but my initial years, till about the age of 13, I was severely asthmatic, and it kind of held me back from any sporting activity, etc. So there was like almost every year without fail, I would prepare for the sports day, PT and this and that. But by the time sports day came around, I was down with an asthma attack because of the dust on the field. Thankfully, I mean, through medication, homeopathic medication, etc., that my family believed in, and the fact that I kind of started pushing myself a little bit, starting class 8th or 9th, that's when I started. I think it was the next level of awareness that I came through happened there, because as part of that, so apart from being slightly different upbringing, apart from being in a different school, etc., I also was extremely driven towards, my first passion was army. So I joined the NCC in class 8, and I was there in NCC even till as late as first year of BCom also. And I did everything, B certificate, C certificate, all various forms of camps, etc. And that kind of set my health right. So apart from those academics and all of this, I think NCC shaped me in a way where it gave me, I think even till today, I am a stickler for punctuality. I mean, 5 means 5, not 501. It gave me.
Are you trying to put that into a little bit of a, dig at me for coming late for the shoot?
Yeah, maybe 90 minutes.
Mumbai traffic, we carve it out.
Yeah. So anyway, so that was one of the elements that kind of shaped me. And if I kind of go on, I think the other one was, this gave me a newfound confidence in sport. So at least in those days, I started doing a lot of football. I was part of the school football team. Later on, I was playing as not the main university football team, but part of the substitute squad. All of these kind of gave me a lot of confidence in who I was. And it gave me a lot of different. I was never a hardcore academic. I mean, I was academically leaning, but I wasn't somebody who would come first or second in class. Maybe third, maybe fourth. I took maths. I never prepared for IIT. I took maths. I never prepared for any engineering exam apart from, any entrance exam apart from NDA, and that's it. And I got through NDA, and I got through everything.
And that's not easy, huh?
It's not easy, but I got through everything, but my rank was 485. So now here comes the first learning, and this is the first part where I'll stop and let you ask the next question, because the first part of the journey and the learning was this failure, because my rank was 485 all India.
And cutoff was?
NDA has a capacity of 350 per batch. And so I was approximately 100 and something in the waiting list.
Yeah.
And the waiting list didn't move beyond another 15, 20 seats that year. And I was 17. And here's what I keep thinking back, that probably I should have taken more shots at it and not stopped at it, because at 17 you say that, मेरे साथ ऐसा हो गया, मैं कभी नहीं करूँगा इसको, and then you want to do the next best thing, next shiny thing.
Correct.
So that's where I think it was a failure. I learned to move on, but I don't think I learned persistence from that.
A very important point that you said was you pushed yourself outside that comfort zone, because for someone who's asthmatic, it's very easy to turn around and say, यार मेरे से नहीं होगा, let me take it easy, कुछ और करते हैं. But to say नहीं यार कुछ भी हो जाए, जी जान लगा देंगे, but we are going to go across and sort this out. Medicines of course help, but I think the biggest medicine is the frame of mind. Now, when you marry these two thoughts together to say that you have to learn to push yourself outside the comfort zone to create something worthwhile. Now, let me give another very interesting context. From Allahabad to higher education, the man reaches some very interesting brands. ISB is a big brand, Symbiosis is a big brand. A lot of people believe that going into a large hallowed institution is going to change life dynamically. Going into a hallowed institution is the marker to success or entry to, the larger doors of, victories. But a lot of people also have that thought to say, at end of the day, the brand or the institution as such doesn't matter. जो matter करता है यार वो अपने अंदर, what you said, the junoon, the shiddat, the craziness, the hunger, the zeal, the ability to hustle. More importantly, the ability to convert a platform to your benefit. For the sake of our audience, a lot of our audience might be in that age group, Koreel, where they might actually have a choice to say that here is a chance to go to a very large institution, but might be very expensive. And here is an opportunity which is not that great a brand, but perhaps I will manage it easier from a financial perspective. What is the code in your mind to crack to say that does this actually matter to a great extent for a leverage? And or given that you've seen so many aspects in your life of different people from different organizations, educational, that finally what matters is your mettle. And This may act as a catalyst or a springboard, but it has its glass ceiling. End result, what you do in terms of how you hustle, how you create your path is what counts. What's been your experience on this? Take us through your ISB days, take us through your symbiosis days, take us through whether that made a huge difference in your decision for the next role that you played in life, or was it more of a calling?
I know it's easier for me to say it right now after many years, and it is very difficult to kind of figure out how you will afford that, etc. But it's a capital investment in yourself, I would say. That if you have got till that point where they are willing to give you that admission, which means you have something in you, right? Then it's a capital investment, and if you kind of get through, and then you also put in that hard work of doing that bit of hustle, you will come out with access to a network which is probably going to be 10x more powerful than an access to another network, despite all the hustle that you might do. So you might do a lot of hustle. So had I been only not gone to ISB, the kind of hustle that I would have had to do would have been 10x of this. It does open doors. Have I still have to go do hustle? I sure do have to hustle around. I have to keep asking. Nothing is easy. Even today, I've had meetings. Nothing is easy. But the fact that I get certain meetings probably wouldn't have happened had I not gone to ISB. Okay. The fact that I get certain meetings probably would not have happened had there not been a SIBM on my portfolio, on my resume. So both sides are important, I think. So I cannot say with the same confidence that had I been only a graduate, BCom graduate from the University of Allahabad, it would have been a completely different life. And I cannot tell you how different it would have been because I don't know. But I'm pretty sure that it wouldn't have been the life I'm leading right now. And probably the level of hustle required would have been that much more.
You said something very interesting here, and a lot of people say this, Koreel, that your net worth is your network. And you emphasize a lot to say that these institutions actually go across and allow you to create that network where the intangible capital of the network is 10x a multiplier than the capital invested in the education. But a lot of our audience might not be that privileged. They may have the academic mentality to be able to reach there, but they may not have the financial wherewithal to reach there. थोड़ा सा इसको अभी घुमाते हैं.
इस पे मैं एक बात बोलूं.
बताओ.
I put myself through ISB. I didn't know, there was no privileged background over there, right? Because I studied till whatever in Allahabad University. I went to SIBM. It was not the premier course of SIBM. It was one of the smaller courses, okay? So again, there was not much money involved over there. Then I worked for the next 7 years and I developed myself to that extent where I could put myself through ISB.
Beautiful. So a lot of people don't understand this, that MBA per se, like the West, is actually a mid-career enhancement program.
Yes.
As against a flip to say immediately you get a large job. A lot of it therefore comes in terms of background of people like us who came from middle class, that you have to create your own financial wherewithal.
Yes.
इसको थोड़ा सा ट्विस्ट करते हैं टू से दैट देयर माइट बी अ लॉट ऑफ आवर यंग ऑडियंस, यंग दर्शक टू से दैट यार मुझे फिर भी द वैल्यू ऑफ नेटवर्क क्रिएट करना है. So let's understand a bit about what you said, because there's a lot of depth in what you said. How does one go about creating a network sans even a very large institution? It can be throughout at the ground level that you start.
Exactly.
So थोड़ा सा इस पे depth पे जाओ Koreel. Teach our audience the question that I have for you as an investor now, all the more. And a lot of our viewers might be people wanting to start a new entrepreneurship journey, want to start a new venture. Define what network is and give us a few hacks to say that how does one try to create a sustainable network without getting defocused in terms of what they are supposed to do.
Good question, Vinayak. I mean, I'm not the best networker around, but I'm above average, I think. And so the context today has changed a lot. So when probably before all these LinkedIns of the world came in, the context was very different. And therefore, if I were to look back at my own career, pre-2011-12 and post-2011-12, the kind of networks I had and the kind of networks I have later on are vastly different. And that's what the internet has enabled me to do, right? So previously the network I would be building was more micro within the organization or within a very narrow definition of that industry where you're meeting similar people at some places, etc., or through friends or colleagues. Later on, that expanded, and how it expanded was that things like LinkedIn, and I mean, whoever's listening, obviously everybody knows LinkedIn, everybody probably networks on LinkedIn, but what is the quality of network are you building over there? Because it's very easy to send a friend or a connection request on LinkedIn and get connected, but that's not your network. Let's be very honest.
Absolutely.
What your network is, people who you've spoken to in some sense seriously, and you've come back with some kind of a new thought, or you've encouraged them to think differently, or at least you've had a nice conversation and a nice coffee together. How do you do that? I think one of the main things is that, firstly, set up a kind of a tangible goal that every week you will talk to somebody new. Now, if you're in the sales field, let's say people who are in the sales field, they do this very easily because they have a sales funnel to build, a pipeline to build.
Right.
So they are talking to one new prospect or 3 new prospects every day.
Correct.
Probably, right? That's your network that you're building. Now, how do you tap into that? That if you're talking to 3 new people or 1 new person every week, whatever that number might be, it's your number. It's a number that you have to be comfortable with.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, it's going to be artificial. So if you're comfortable with 3 meetings a week, what are you talking in that meeting? Are you going there just कि मेरा काम निकला है बस उतना, or you're going to say that I'm coming here with probably a no agenda chat. Let's talk, but at the end of the talk, I want to go back, leaving you with this thought that I had, and I will probably explain it to you more. If you don't want to do that, and if this is somebody completely strange, for example, if let's say I don't know somebody who I've just connected with on LinkedIn, but I want to kind of meet that person, I will probably say that, hey, I find this particular article or this thing that you did very interesting. Would you be open to meeting up, or at least meeting on Zoom or something for a quick chat? I would love to know more. Believe me, everybody is a sucker for flattery. Okay, no matter how we this thing, people like, if they've done something and they've put it on LinkedIn, which means they want attention. And I hope people don't come at me for saying this. It is there. I mean, why else are you advertising it? Because you want to be known as a thought leader in that area. Now, are you going to be a thought leader in vacuum? No, right? So if that person does not want to be a thought leader in vacuum, they need somebody to talk. So why don't you talk to them? Now, I understand that if you are here right now, maybe 3 years into your career, and this person is 20 years into their career, there's a great mismatch. But there's a way to approach, right? Saying that I truly believe that this is an area of interest for me. I really want to understand what you've been doing. I really would wish that you could spend 15-20 minutes to tell me about it. And it's as easy as that. People do not mind spending 15-20 minutes, as long as you are also flexible in saying that I will go by your schedule.
Correct.
Don't hound them. If they've said no twice, don't hound them after that. Get to the next person, but keep developing that. And as you keep doing that week on week, I think somewhere in your mind starts to shift, and you start becoming a much more efficient networker on your own. Then you don't need these hooks of, please tell me about this, please tell me about that. You will probably end up figuring out topics almost subconsciously to talk about.
So to summarize, you're bringing in genuinity, you're bringing in a non-agenda oriented approach, and also in your mind the ability to, without sounding desperate, without looking at someone in the eyes or context of hounding, a repeated approach till that person hopefully turns around and says that it's worth my 15 minutes.
And repeated, not too many repeats.
Yeah.
I'm saying that ek do baar karo. Don't give it a break after that. Approach after another month maybe. So be persistent, but don't be rude while being persistent. And secondly, from your own perspective, you're building a habit of reaching out to somebody new every week. So your mind, after a while, gets habituated.
Absolutely.
And the week you don't reach out, you feel something is missing.
Something is missing. Incomplete tha. When a person goes through that first job, and take us back to your first job after all your education was over, and the joy of getting that first appointment letter. It's a beautiful canvas which, according to me, teaches us the crests and troughs of life. But it also goes across and resonates in your mind to realize after a point of time that your direction towards A or B is set by the experience that you have in that first job. A lot of our viewers might be in that age where they're getting their first job. What are those few learnings for them to take advice and gauge from you to say that A, if this happens with you also, don't be disheartened because it's a great learning. If this happens, don't think it's a failure, but actually is a great stepping stone. And more importantly, how do you go across and decode that mindset to say that the first job is also meant to teach you a very, very valuable lesson in life, and that is about resilience. Because life is about how resilient you are in terms of things which are outside your control. उससे पहले काफ़ी चीज़ आपके कंट्रोल में होती है. जिस दिन आप पहले नौकरी में जाते हो, a lot of that control shifts to that organization. So take us through your mindset, your experience. How was your first job? Do you recollect it? It's been years ago.
As fresh as this morning. So this was 2000 February. I was still doing my advertising course in Symbiosis, and this is not the flagship advertising course. This is another one of the other sidey ones. So, but that also gave me some room to pick up some jobs on the side. So one day my friend tells me that, you know what, there is this, and that was the .com era, right? The height of the .com bubble. There's this place in Aundh. It's called musiccurry.com. I can't really explain what they do, but music ka kaam hai. And they want people to come and rip CDs, tag them correctly, put it on the server, and write a few lines about that song and things like that. I said, I wanted to become a copywriter. So, so again, let me go back one more step back before I get back to this story, is that to whoever's listening, I mean, if you are young, your career will never be a straight line. It will never even be a smooth curve. It will be peaks and troughs, and it's always going to be like that. Nobody's career, I mean, if somebody has said that their career was the smoothest, I don't think it's true, right? So anyway, so going back
then
to
that
this
person's had a very boring career.
Yeah, or a boring career. Going back to this, till 2000, summer of 2000, I am this guy who believes he's the most creative copywriter that he's ever going to be. So he joins this job for 2000 rupees a month in Aundh, fancy locality in Pune, startup with its own pool table, table tennis table, etc., music all over the place, CDs, etc. We were supposed to rip these CDs, and this was copyrighted. So it was from a musical family of Maharashtra. They were starting this music startup.
Right.
And this was an online radio for the NRI audience. So we had to do all of this that I just told you about. Fantastic, right? What else could a 22-year-old want? He'll get 2000 rupees. In those days, it was a big amount. And मुझे बोला था कि पहले 3 महीने, उसके बाद बढ़ जाएगा salary because we have 3 months probation and all of that. ठीक है, हुआ, गया मैं, किया. Sure enough, then I figured out how to move up very soon. So I used to hang out with this guy who was the creative. There were 2 creative teams. One of the creative team lead I used to hang out with. His name is Vijay, and I still am great friends. He's a cartoonist in Pune, lovely person. And he was like a elder brother to me at that organization, and I kind of used to talk to him that how this is what my goal is, to be a copywriter. How can I be? Can I write something for you? And it wasn't my place to write something for him because he had his team of copywriters. And finally one day he said, "Yaar, ye roz chai aur sutte ke upar roz dimag kharab karta hai." So he finally gave me a little bit to write. So I wrote. Next day he gave me something more to write. He said, "Can you write this one also today?" I said, "Why not?" So dhire dhire, Vijay, one day he says, "Okay, I'm going to talk to this other guy who's your current boss. I'm going to take you into my team." That was my first lovely aha moment that, okay, this is how, I didn't know the word hustle in those days, but probably what I did was a hustle. And I would go to office on a Saturday also and do Vijay's copywriting for him because otherwise I was doing something else. Then was the next level of hustle. I was like, how do I cement myself? I was still on probation, but my salary had been made 4,000. 2000 से 4000 हो गया, but still on probation. Then I said, अभी पूरा company जो है, it's a web development and all, so let me teach myself HTML. I actually pestered the guy who used to sit next to me, an HTML and JavaScript developer, to teach me HTML. I said कि I'm delivering copies for copywriting, etc. That's fine. I also want to be able to understand that what I'm writing, whatever the design thought process, whether it's even executable or not. So teach me. So in that 1 year, from February of 2000 till about April of 2001, I self-learned a lot of this HTML, JavaScript, DHTML, etc., etc. And towards the end of that entire stint, I was doing not just the copywriting, but I was also doing some basic amount of web development, etc., etc., all self-taught. And I was, by the end of it, I think I was not even a copywriter, only by designation probably. Then came the first reality check. The .com bubble burst. It burst, and I was without a job. Firstly, it was a shocker because I thought I was doing well. As I'm 22 and a half, I'm on top of the world. Salary has now from 4, it has become probably almost 15 or something. I was on top of the world कि यार 22-22 साल की उम्र में अच्छा खासा मिल रहा है, वो और क्या चाहिए. But obviously brought to a halt. And we were told, you have 1 month or 2 to figure out, and here's some severance money. अभी आप लोग अपने अपने रास्ते जाओ. So, okay, fair enough. Life happens. That's when I figured out the way to now get to another place. So again, in those days, I didn't know the word networking, I didn't know the word hustle, but I figured out. I kept calling people, I kept attending interviews. Then I started leaning on my network of friends of friends, and finally figured out कि दिल्ली में CNBC नाम का एक न्यूज़ चैनल है जो कि सिर्फ बिजनेस न्यूज़ करता है, and they have a website called Money Control. There's a vacancy there. It's a writing job, but we don't know if you'll be able to do financial writing. Do you want to come and try? Now, I was in Pune. I don't think I had too much money because I had already lost a job and I was still paying part of the rent along with some other guys who were staying with me in that flat. I said, it doesn't matter. I mean, at that age, you just pack your bags and leave.
Yeah.
So I packed my bags, went to my very good friend's place in Delhi and camped out over there, and got a job at Money Control. And again, a hat off to that friend. Her name is Smriti, and till date we are best friends. But because of her and her ability to...
What does she do now?
She's in communications, and she's a communications professional, and she also runs a little NGO for tribal women.
No, there's a reason I'm asking, because we'll put her picture up here.
Okay. So again, that happened over there, and so that was one of the main, you can say, fulcrums on the basis of which I made that next leap.
Right.
And I went to Money Control, did a test, proper copy test, and there was this stock market jargon thrown at me as a copy test. I don't think I understood much of it, but one thing I will say, I was pretty interested in business even from then on, because I was a BCom graduate. I was interested in business. I used to read Economic Times or the business page whenever possible. So I knew a little bit enough to pass that test. But once I got in, I kind of worked my...
you can say your ass out.
Okay, I kind of worked my ass off for the next...
There's no filter in this.
I worked my ass off for the next several years till I went to ISP. So from
2000... Crow wants to participate in our conversation as well. तो कोई जाके कौवा को भी बोल दो कि भाई either उड़ जाए. We'll continue.
So from May of 2001 till April of 2009, when I went to ISP, I was at firstly at Money Control. In Money Control, I moved up a couple of designations.
Right.
Then I kind of was able to kind of prove myself that CNBC, the main CNBC, took me up as part of the equity research desk. I was able to prove myself there. Then I was heading the markets news desk at CNBC for the longest time. Then I became the deputy news editor. So there was a trajectory over there. That was the trajectory that would.
So you used to the camera and the anchor as well.
Yes, I'm used. I hosted a couple of shows. I used to host Power Breakfast at one time, and then later on at Bloomberg TV also I used to host a morning show.
Very nice.
So one of the things that I want to impress upon this journey and the zigzag part of the journey is that even when what it seems like that once I entered money control, then I left over here. Within that also there were zigzags. There were periods when I thought I would get fired for doing something.
Absolutely.
And I didn't get fired simply because what you do before that, the amount of hard work that you've shown probably prevents you from getting fired.
True.
But there will be instances where things will happen and you have to just make sure that those are not the only instances that define you and that there are many other redeeming factors that define you. So from CNBC, I reached a kind of a glass ceiling saying that I was, in my mind, I had done quite a bit, but I wasn't being able to permeate a certain level.
Right.
And that's when I think the second person whose picture you can put up, my wife, Meha, encouraged me
उसमें तो
to
option ही नहीं है.
encouraged me to do my MBA.
Right.
And this was monumental in the sense that we were expecting that time, but I went and did an MBA while she brought up our daughter for that one whole year, all along. But that MBA is one of the turning points of my
Key turning points in your life. How does that calling come? How does one recognize that calling? And what are those few thoughts for you to say that if the calling is XYZ, you need to go across and take the plunge? How did life for Koreel change from being a news anchor and a head of a desk to becoming Koreel the impact investor, Koreel the financial investor, Koreel the consumer investor? How did that happen?
Curiosity. And why curiosity? Because, so you have to realize that as part of a markets news desk, I was exposed to multiple sectors. And in some senses, you asked why not an editor or why not chief editor? I never wanted to be one who sits on a pulpit and tells people what to think. No, that's not my role, I think. I think people have, if at all, just give people information and let them figure out themselves. And I think that's where the stock markets are a great leveler. There is information on the screen. You figure it out yourself. And either you make money or you don't make money. If you are not making, somebody else is making money. And from that underlying principle, I think throughout the day, if you're tracking stock markets, you're also exposed to very different kinds of companies, right? I mean, at one point, you're looking at maybe a Z declaring its results, or maybe next moment Hindalco is doing an acquisition, maybe Tata is buying Chorus, something or the other is happening. And you have to have a multi-sector, if not deep knowledge, but at least sufficient knowledge that the moment the news breaks, you must know enough about that business or that group or corporate group, etc., to at least put out something. And I think that led to a lot of curiosity. It would lead to me, as it is, as I was telling you, as a kid also I used to read a lot. And this led me to reading other things.
Yeah.
Maybe not spy thrillers, but other things. So that was one. And from that, at that point, I remember somebody told me, somebody else, a senior in the organization, was kind of looking at getting into fund management and things like that. And that person was doing quite well. And I was still quite junior in those days. And I remember asking, and he said that, you have to manage money to, if you really want to put your money where your mouth is, you have to manage money. That's what kind of stuck with me with that one sentence. The other sentence that stuck with me was that don't ever be a cost point. Either be a product point or a revenue point. Otherwise, cost point, what was there in my first career, I was a cost point. Correct. And it's very easy to get rid of the cost point.
First downturn, the cost point has to be removed.
So I was very clear that if I'm really truly interested in stock markets, in equity markets, etc., I need to be where the money is in some way. Either I'll manage the money or I'll be an investment banker or something. I don't know why. Investment banking sounds very glamorous from outside. It's not. But anyway, that was the thought process at that point of time, which, as you can see, has got refined to what I am today. But at some point, you always have that first germ of an idea. That was the first germ of an idea. Then I followed it on to what should I be doing to follow this first germ of an idea. And I said I need to probably do an MBA, or I knew about CFA, but very loosely in those days. But my first port of calling still, in those times, MBA finance was much more popular than CFA in those days. So I said, let's do an MBA finance. Now, where do I go? So I got through Oxford said, and I got through ISB. As I said, we were expecting a child. So I said, Oxford to nahi ja paunga.
Right.
Even though I could have probably gone in hindsight, I don't know. But I said, let's stay closer to home. So I went to ISB. And that's where at least I started my journey. Now, did ISB put me to the path of managing money? No. Because when I came back from ISB, I went back to doing a similar role at Bloomberg in India, but it was more expanded from a strategic point of view. But I was still not managing money. I was still analyzing stock markets. I was still analyzing other people who managed money, and I was bringing them on air, etc., etc. But I was still not. So, as they say, things happen, and probably I didn't even push for it to happen. Things happen. A headhunter reached out to me. They said Bennett Coleman, which is the Times Group, is looking to start a new team. They don't know what this team will be yet. They are loosely calling it market development. It will be loosely associated with the brand capital thing. Nobody knows yet. Everything was nobody knows, but we know that we want a new team with people who are not traditionally from just media sales or anything like
So
that.
moldable.
Yes. So they said that they want different kinds of thinkers. Would you be interested? They want people who understand finance. So I said, yes, chalo. So I did a couple, I think there was some 3 or 4 rounds of interviews, and I got through. Over there also, I still remember the first 5 or 6 months, we kept making iterations of what market development would be until we zeroed in on a investment model called Springboard, which was kind of a structured transaction where we were, as Times Group, we were investing in non-media because we wanted to diversify, right? So we were investing in e-commerce, we invested in FMCG, we invested in healthcare, we invested in affordable luxury, etc. So I did kind of, I think back to back in those 3 years, several deals in all these areas.
Public domain information that you can share? Some names?
Provogue was one of them. Provogue is that men's apparel and
men's apparel.
Yeah. Then we did something called Lifespan Diagnostics, which right now is called Revive because they got bought out by a Chennai-based company. It's on Worldly Seaface. I don't know if you've seen that place. It is about managing diabetes. Then we did something called Brandstorm, which is into affordable luxury. So they have a bouquet of brands under them and
like a house of brands.
House of brands and pretty well-known brands, something like a Giordano, Swiss Eagle, etc. So these were the ones that we did. One of them was slightly hatke. I mean, in those days, we did something called Local Banya, which was a precursor to actually Big Basket.
Big Basket, yeah.
That didn't survive the first wave of whatever that was happening of e-commerce in those days, but we tried. So yeah, so we did several of those and good memories from that. So that kind of set me on the path of where I am today.
And how did where you are today happen? Tell us a bit about MDIF.
Yeah, wait. I'll tell you how I landed up over here. You've heard of the word called hubris? Hubris happened to me when I was at Times after 3 years.
I started with that. हमें सब में बाकी सब में पानी कम है.
So hubris led me to believe that I can do something of my own. I'll start my consultancy, and I felt that
everyone will follow.
And there's so much money in the system that's coming into the system by way of investors, and everybody's raising. So I will help people get investment ready, help them raise funds, help them navigate term sheets, etc., etc., or even do operational consulting, right? So anyway, nothing kicked off. I mean, I didn't make money. I got revenue, but did I actually? Would it suffice to say that I made money? No.
Yeah.
So I got a bit from here, a bit from there, etc., etc. But by the end of it, I was actually thrashing around to see kuch to haath lag jaye and all of that. But one thing that happened out of that was that because I was constantly out in the field talking to people, etc., at least my network grew. So whether I blew through my savings or not, etc., is not the main point. But the main point is that my network grew, and somebody told me that, somebody else is setting up a small fund in Bangalore. They want some kind of a consultant over there. So would you want to kind of consult them? So I spent a year in Bangalore, kind of doing this, half the time in Bangalore, half the time in Bombay, but kind of rebuilt my life in some sense professionally over there by consulting them, etc. It wasn't the best of things, not only because personally I was torn between two cities, but it wasn't probably ideologically, it wasn't the best place that I identified with working, but I had to kind of do it. Sometimes you have to do things which
to bring food on the table.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
to bring food on the table, you have to pay an EMI, etc., etc. So I did that, and that was also related to the media space, but it was more like grant funding rather than equity funding, etc. It gave me a new perspective. I will not deny that. It might not have been in alignment with what I believe should be done, or what the how I believe businesses should operate, etc. But at least it gave me a new perspective. And I think every new perspective that you can gather in your journey is important.
Absolutely.
But importantly, what it gave me was that one of the clients over there was in talks with where I am currently, MDIF, for a fundraise. And that client used me as a referee for MDIF. And that's how I got talking to MDIF. And when I was being a referee to this client, and I had just about left that place, I'd had enough, and I'd put in my papers. And MDIF, one of the senior MDIF guys was talking to me as doing a reference check on this company, etc., etc. And one thing led to the other. We had another couple of conversations. Said, you know what? We want some more skills in this region in Asia. Would you be open to joining? I didn't tell them how desperate I was, but I said, of course. So, and location wasn't a constraint. They said you can be in Bombay, Delhi. We really don't care. So I came back to Bombay, joined MDIF, and it's been quite a journey. So initially I joined looking after only India, Sri Lanka, and Nepal, like South Asia kind of thing, investments. In those days, MDIF's investment thesis was very different to what it is right now, in the sense that at least in this region, it is still an impact investor. In those days, it was like impact only through the lens of news and media, which obviously we still don't do it in this region. So I said that, listen, if you want to do impact investing, so there are many other things apart from news and media. You can do content, you can do educational things, you can do technology, you can do creator economy, you can do many things which will lead to livelihood, etc., etc. So within the prism of working for an impact investor, I think we've been able to broaden it as much and make it probably much more commercially viable and sustainable, the kind of businesses that we're doing. So when you look at our portfolio in India and Indonesia, the kind of companies that we have are slightly more hatke than what the traditional news media would be. But I think that's where the world is going, because business models have changed, sectors and segments have changed, and the way people, the young people and even people of our age group, the way we all consume content, it's changed completely, right? And the way you get information has also changed, and therefore there is no real. And that's one of the biggest challenges that...
because it's so dynamic.
Yeah, it's all dynamic. And news media, as we all know, the business model has stayed stagnant.
Yeah.
So how do you drive impact as an investor? Because if you also have the word investor, right?
Yeah.
If you had
return.
If you have the word philanthropy, then probably you forget about returns. Investor, you have to drive some returns.
Absolutely.
Somewhere. Right? So that's where we are right now.
Some of the names of the portfolios that you may want to talk about?
So we have something called Joe Stocks, which you and I
think most of your portfolios you have the opportunity to work on,
you
either on the other side or on the same side.
So we have Joe Stocks, we have Array and Asiaville, both of which are OTT creators kind of thing. We have in Indonesia, we have a data and business / economics data company called Katadata. We have something in the legal information and legal SaaS product space called Hukum Online, and many more. So these are, I think some of the notable names that we feel very, very hopeful about.
So now we are coming to the latter part of this segment and some very exciting things to ask you on. But before that, let me ask you the value of lifeboats in Koreel's life. A, what do you think of this show, Koreel? How did you find it? What do you think that I'm trying to build your view around this as a concept of lifeboat? Do you think having advisors who have a very 360-degree perspective itself is a great lifeboat for, the founder, the entrepreneur, the investor? And more importantly, for Koreel, finally, who are those lifeboats that matter?
So, okay, lots of questions. I don't retain so many questions very well in my head, but let me see if I can tick mark. What does life
Focus.
What you're trying to kind of do over here? I've seen not all your conversations, but a few conversations that I've seen. I think they all bring out a unique aspect from a person's own perspective, whether they are an investor or entrepreneur, and each of those perspectives I've found interesting. Because in everything there is something to learn.
Yeah.
No matter how mundane it is, there's something to learn. So I think learnings are galore in these things, and somehow I find them relatable in the sense that the conversation does not seem like something which is the unattainable or unachievable, etc. So it feels relatable, and I think as our friends at Josh Talk say, relatability is the most important part of motivation, because you will not feel motivated otherwise. So that's one. Who are the lifeboats? What is the role of advisors? I think was your next question in an entrepreneur's life. I think, whoever your advisors are, just as long as those advisors make sense to you and your purpose, that's what counts. Now, it could be different kinds of advisors. It could be people who advise you on your own personal life. It could be people who advise you on business. It could be n number of people. Who are my lifeboats? I think pretty much, my mother, my wife, the three women in my life, my mom, my wife, and my daughter.
Of course.
And as I said, one of my friends earlier on. So these are my lifeboats. I also turn to various people for advice from time to time within the ecosystem, and so there is someone, there's Rajiv Kalambi. I don't know if you know the name. So
yeah, he's met me on a couple of
yes,
transactions. Hyderabad based, right? If I remember.
No,
correctly.
Bangalore based.
Bangalore based.
So he's been a person who I turn to for advice from time to time, and like this. So a lot of people will say I have this mentor, I have that mentor. I think I just do a best of collection album kind of a thing. So it's like that. So I pick people's mind in various aspects from time to time, and that's it.
I keep saying this, lifeboat is like कुछ दोस्त, वो कुछ ही होता है, बाकी सारे जो होते हैं वो भीड़ होते हैं.
So in my friends group also, so I don't have a huge friends group. I have a very small friends group, 5 or 6 people.
But that's what it's supposed to be.
Very close, and then maybe expand it a bit, maybe another 5 or 6, and that's where it stops. Yeah. And we are often in and out of each other's homes, but it's almost like family now.
So as long as you're a runner, let's put it as a runner, right? You showed me a whole bunch of medals. Take us through maybe one learning that running across so many marathons, races, whatever you may want to term it as. Evidently, I'm not a runner. But everyone has one such passion which draws out one learning, which draws out something absolutely out of the box. For me, my biggest passion, other than building vertices, building the firm, doing so many things that I'm doing, is this particular show. And my biggest learning out of this is the fact that everyone has a story to share and every story inspires. That's my learning. Likewise, from running, what has been your biggest? And what would you go across and advise our viewers in terms of a takeaway from something which is your extracurricular? In this case, running. They may have anything else that they want to do. But what is that key takeaway?
So I think it gives you, one is just, unless you turn up every day in this kind of a pursuit, which is long distance running or whatever, you will not be able to do it, right? So turning up every day, and turning up every day means not every day you will be able to do 100%. So even when you train or even when you run, you're not running a PB, which is a personal best every time, right? But you're running. Doesn't matter how many minutes you're doing it in, etc. Showing up, I think there's this thing, right? 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration.
Correct.
It's exactly like that. Because that showing up every day gives you that final 1% of success. Okay. Now, what gives me great success and why I say this is turning up every day. I mean, I'm well into my 40s. I run faster than most of the people in their 20s. And I think that's one of the biggest kicks I get out of every time I run a race is the thing that I see that I can be faster than so many people decades younger than me. It's probably sounds superficial, but it's a kick because it keeps me going. It gives me that inspiration. It's motivating for me. But it also gives me it also benefits me is that it clears up my mind. So if I'm in a bit of a lack of ideas, I think every time after this also, I'll probably go for a run. My mind would have cleared up. I'll probably get a new idea. I will not probably execute it immediately, but I have the new idea.
Yeah.
Or if I'm in a funk, I'll get rid of that funk because it's pretty, endorphins do that.
Yeah, it does. Clears out the head to a great extent.
And the other thing, okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I think running is not the only thing that I do on a regular basis. If you
I
saw
saw the drums, of course, the music.
Yes, so that also clears up my head a lot.
Music is therapy, I think, in its own way. So now this brings us to the last part of the segment. It's a very fun part. You have a choice. Okay, there is something known as LifeBoat shots, and there's something known as a LifeBoat word up. LifeBoat shots and LifeBoat word up.
Okay.
The shots is basically a very nicely derived program which is very unique to something which has never been done, which is your random questions.
Okay.
Which I think my team got inspired through a particular Bollywood show.
Okay.
There is no hamper. Don't ask for it.
I'm making my own coffee.
There's only love and affection you'll get. The word up is basically I'll give you a word and whatever comes first in your mind is what you have to go across and talk about. Do you prefer the word up? Do you prefer the shots?
Let's do the shots first, and if that fails, we'll do the word up.
All right. Let's go with this. What is the most unusual item in your house?
I think
other than yourself,
compared to most houses, I have a drum kit at home. I have a cajon
and that's
at
there
home.
in the montage, and I heard you play. What's your go-to comfort food?
Dal chawal with papad.
What's the most weirdest gift that you've ever received?
Weirdest gift? I can't recollect actually. What would be a weird gift? Maybe I've never received a weird gift. Let's leave it at that. Seriously, I've never received a weird gift.
Or maybe you don't want to disclose it.
No, I have never received a weird gift, and it's, nothing that I would consider weird. So,
okay, what is the best advice that you ever got?
As I said, somebody told me that don't be on the cost front, always be on the product or revenue front.
What is the most interesting thing about you?
I can talk to you about many things. I can talk to you about sports. I can bore you about heavy metal. I can bore you about long distance running. I can tell you about how the athletes in Kenya train for the long distance.
I'm bored.
And you will get bored.
Just kidding. If there was an autobiography written on your life, would you rather have it as a book or a comic book?
Comic book.
What would be your zombie apocalypse plan?
So I need a cellar for my single malts.
Right.
I need enough good meats and all in a deep freeze. And I hope internet will still be there. So I'm kind of sorted.
Okay. What is the most useless skill or talent that you have?
I love to be symmetrical about everything.
Interesting.
So it balances out things in my mind also.
What's your favorite conspiracy theory?
I just read about something the other day. Conspiracy theory. The pyramids were built by aliens.
Okay. If you had to be one video game character, what would you be?
I don't play video games, but from what I have played when I was a kid, that's the only character I know. I think Mario. I mean, that's it.
You won the mushrooms, basically.
Maybe, but I really I don't play video games. So
Just another way of asking for the mushrooms. Okay. Finally, I think this is something very close to your heart. Which was your first music concert?
Great Indian Rock, Pragati Maidan.
Nice. With that, my friend, we come to an end of a wonderful chat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's been a really mind-opening, eye-opening conversation for me as well, because nobody has asked me so many probing questions, not even my wife.
I'm glad. And I'm glad, very happy that you opened up the way you did, and we could gauge you not just from your investor mindset, but also in terms of everything else that you've done in life. And I do hope and I do wish that our viewers learn a lot in terms of, more importantly, what really matters in their growth, in their journey of building and, a very interesting entrepreneurial venture. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Vinayak.
Thank you for being in the LifeBoat.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure.